I want to ask you this. Since you are part of the legal team of Biden-Harris, you must have seen the comments from the legal team of Mr. Trump. They say it's not over yet. Can you decode for us what this means?
It may not be. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me on, and good evening. It may not be over in the respect that there are certain states where the Trump campaign will be entitled to have a recount of the votes. But the fact of the matter is, recounts very rarely change the outcome. There's only 2 times in the last years that I can think of when a recount changed the outcome. And that was when the gap was very, very small to begin with, in Washington State in 2004 or in Minnesota in 2008, where the Republican was up by about 200 votes, and they did a recount, and the Democrat ended up up by about 100 votes. Those are 2 examples where it changed. But think about how small that margin had to be. Biden is already up by more than 1,100 votes. In Georgia, already up probably by tens of thousands in Pennsylvania. There's no prospect of a recount actually changing the result in these states.
So you say that any attempt as of this moment to urge for a recount or take these matters to courts is only a delaying tactic, and it doesn't really affect the impact, just delays things a little?
I think that's correct. It's part of what we've seen from the Trump legal team from the very beginning, which is about making it more difficult for certain kinds of people to vote and about raising questions about certain kinds of votes. You mentioned that I was on the ground in Pennsylvania on Election Day, and there's a very telling thing that I watched there. I was in a conservative northern part of the state, and the machine vote went very, very heavily for Trump. The folks that came out on Election Day went into the machine and cast their ballot very heavily for Trump. The vote by mails, those people who mailed in an absentee ballot, those went almost as heavily for Joe Biden. So how you vote indicates who you voted for, which is why the Trump campaign has done everything they can to raise questions about mail-in votes and has even used the United States Postal Service to try and slow them down.
Okay, Mr. Bartlett, I wanted to ask you the possibility of an increase in the margin of error, particularly because we are talking about elections in the midst of a pandemic, in COVID times. This is an unusual situation which has led to an unusual form of voting. Do you think that is something which is raising a sense of fear among people?
Anything that's new and unfamiliar, especially involving a fundamental right, is going to make some people concerned and make some people fearful. And just to be clear, vote-by-mail ballots are subject to some difficulties. In Pennsylvania, if you don't have your ballot in 2 envelopes, a blank one and then the outside mailing envelope, if you just have it in that one envelope, your vote won't be counted. So there are risks there in terms of getting all those votes counted. But fundamentally, the U.S. military has been voting by mail for 160 years. It's a system that we know works, and it's a system that we know is safe. And again, if you're talking about a recount, you're talking about running the same ballots back through the same machines a second time. You're not likely to change the outcome. My concern is that what we're going to have is delay, and what we're going to have is a process where the Trump administration, knowing they haven't won re-election, knowing they've got no prospect of prevailing, nevertheless draw this out, raise questions, and put the burdens of that on the Biden administration.